I went ahead and put the fabric in an embroidery hoop. Normally, if it's just a shirt or something, you probably wouldn't have it in that, but I thought you'd be able to see it better if I have it in a hoop. I like to start the button by putting the needle. I went ahead and threaded the needle. The thread should be about 18 inches long, and then you should put a good sized knot in it. And I like to start it on the front because that way the knot is hidden even when you're done. Bring that back up through as close as you can to where it started. And then see the button has a groove. The groove should face up. Just push the needle back down through. But the knot helps make a little bit of a shank when you put it on top like I just did, and then you come back through the first hole, up, push it back down through, bring it up, same hole, back down through, sorry to quit talking. But you just keep doing that. You do this at least 4 times. You can do it more if you want. But that'll usually give you a pretty good solid attachment. And then you see how I'm coming under the button to bring the needle back out. Wrap it around, tug it. Wrap it around, tug it. This helps make a shank, so when your button is fastened, when whatever you're wearing, it doesn't show as much. Pull the needle through the fabric, and then on the back you want to make a couple little stitches to anchor the end of your thread. And like I said, this is a really useful skill, and I really wanted to share something useful today because my other videos have been more introductory and showing you what supplies you need. So you just cut that close to the end, and just like that, you have a button neatly attached. This is going to be the straight stitch. I'm using the button I said on the other day. I'm going to make this into the core of a flower, like in a quilt square. So you'll see that take shape as I keep going. To get started, I'm using black because this is just going to be a small border. It's going to go around the flower. I'm going to just, I already knotted this. It's about 18 inches long. And it's usually stick with that length so it doesn't tangle. Just pull it through. About 1/8 of an inch to 1/4 inch. This. And you pull it on through. And then you keep doing that way. And this stitch can also be used in addition to embroidery. You can use this as a basting stitch. You can use it to mend a rip that you're just like in a real pinch and you got to get out the door. If you have a rip in your shirt or something in the seam, you can stitch it together this way. And normally you might buy a pattern to iron on, for your embroidery, or you might use a fabric marking pen and draw out what you're going to do. This is just a little bit of freehand embroidery, so you can kind of see. I wanted to really give you a good look at the straight stitch. Now you can see I'm kind of rushing because of the silence. I don't want to keep being silent. And my stitches aren't as even as they could be. And I'm gonna, as I proceed, I'll probably put something coming out of them to even the appearance up a little bit. Come on. So I'll show you the back too. Now I'm gonna go ahead and go off camera but I'm going to bring this on around, and it's called a straight stitch, even though, yeah, I know I'm curving it, but it's called a straight stitch. You can also call it the running stitch, and like I said, if you use regular thread instead of embroidery floss, you can use this in other types of sewing, other types of hand sewing, for basic repairs on your clothes. And if you're making a garment, a lot of times the pattern will tell you to baste, and this is the stitch that it's asking you to do. How to do a back stitch, and I'm also going to show you how to fix it if you make a little mistake like this loose thread right here. So I'm going to start by coming up right under that stitch. I'm going to hook that thread under the needle. Then to make the back stitch, which I'm going to use as a stem of a flower that comes up with this button as the center of the flower. You come about 1/8 of an inch to 1/4 of an inch forward, go straight down, pull it through, come back up about halfway in the center of that stitch, pull it through, then come just about 1/8 of an inch forward, down, back up, down, you see it makes kind of a thicker line than the running stitch did. You can also do a variation of this stitch that's called the stem stitch to add curves. So like for making the leaves, or if you just want the stem to look bent, like the nature of flower might have a bent stem, curved stem. You can also frame like the border of a flower. And you can also use this stitch when you're mending clothing. It makes a stronger seam as far as hand sewing than the straight stitch, running stitch does. And if you were going to make clothing for something like something where you had to use retro techniques, like for Civil War reenactments where everything has to be authentic, you would use this stitch for the main seam in the clothing. You can make it longer. Some designs you will. For this particular one, I wanted it fairly short because I'm going to come off of it and make leaves. And I just thought this would look nice. I'm going to go ahead and go off camera and finish this line that goes up to the button. And this back stitch stem that I did. And I'm going to use the stem stitch, which almost seems backwards since I'm making a leaf. And I'm going to make a couple of little leaves. I'm going to show you how. You pull the thread through, you go forward about 1/8 of an inch, pull it down through, and then you come on about in the middle, a little off to the side. And because I want this to curve, I'm going to kind of come almost across here to right there. Another one about in the middle, poke it up through. This one will come just above. And I'm going to bring it back up under, slightly across. And back. I'm going to do couple of tiny satin stitches to fill in the center. And I've showed those in a previous episode, but I can refresh them. It's just the satin stitches, the stitch you use to fill in a block of color. There. And then I'm going to make a slightly bigger leaf to show you the stem stitch just a little better coming off the other side of the stem here. About 1/8 of an inch back down through. Back up right about in the center of it, off to the side. That's a little bigger so you can see it better. And then like the other one, I'm going to fill it in with a satin stitch. If it were a lot bigger, I would probably make the V-shaped satin stitch. But since it's a really small leaf, I'm just going to bring it across the full width of it. Some music or something in here if I can get my editing tool to do it, so you don't have to just listen to the silence. If it's all just silence, I'm really sorry. I'm new to the editing tools for making videos and trying to figure everything out. So there is that. I'm going to anchor it on the back with a couple tiny stitches right under the other colored, green colored stitches, so it doesn't come apart later. And then I'll just snip the thread off, and that's how you do the stem stitch to make a leaf. Little leaf, bigger leaf, and I filled those in with the satin stitch. So I'll show you fabric marking pencils. The advantage of using a fabric marking pencil over a regular pencil is that it washes out. So if you make a mark in the wrong spot, you can be fairly confident it's going to wash out of your fabric. You can also get these as fabric marking pens. I just happened to find the pencils on sale and I grabbed these so I could show them to you. There's a light one you could use on darker fabrics. Since I'm working on white, I'm going to set the white one aside and use this blue one. And I've been working on this in some of my previous episodes, and what I'm going to do, I'm going to run a chain stitch through these open parts of the straight stitch, and I'm just going to mark that with this so I can show you. And it's pretty light. And I'm going to keep going around there. And I could press harder and make it darker, but since I'm holding it and it's in the embroidery hoop, it's coming out pretty light. If you can even see it, let me try to push a little harder. And then in the next episode, I'll be back to show you the chain stitch that I'm drawing out right now where that'll, so you can see how to do that and what it looks like. Yeah, let's come up here. So I ended up with an odd number of spaces around here, the black spots. So I'm just going to kind of bring the last, when I go to get ready to stitch it, I'm just going to kind of bring it up to this stem to finish it, to balance it out. So that's the fabric marking pencil. And like I said, after, like, so if I do the chain stitch and there's little spots that aren't completely covered, it will wash out. So I'm going to show you how to do the chain stitch. And I'm going to cut any end embroidery. I'm going to come back up. The needle goes, I've already got it started a little bit there. Needle goes down through, back up, and then the thread comes under the tip of the needle. Pull it not completely snug, but fairly snug. And the needle goes back down through as close to the spot where it came up as possible. Pull it snug. Back up through. See, I have a little frayed thing here. Just pull that off, toss it aside. Go back down through, come back up through, around the tip with the embroidery floss, pull it through. Back down through. Back up through, loop, under, loop floss goes around the needle, kind of helps to hold it with your thumb as it comes through, so if it's twisting at all like mine is today. Put that down through. Hook the thread, sorry about the lighting and camera angles. Hook it, come around. And where this is freehand, it's not as even as it might be if I had used a pattern. You can see it kind of looks like a chain, and I believe I'm going to go off camera while I finish this, bringing it all the way around here. And I'm going to go sit in my comfortable chair and sew for a little bit, and I will be back to show you in the next episode. I'm going to start turning the button into the core of a flower. I'm going to show you how to start making the freehand embroidery flower that's going to come out of the core of this button. The button's a core. So bring the needle up through the fabric right about in the center of the button. Doesn't have to be precise because it will be covered. And this is going to be a series of straight stitches, kind of randomly placed and radiating outward from the button. Let's see, the first layer you really won't even see, so they're not going to be super tight on the first layer. But they will add to the effect. Can't really see them, can you? Let me I can show it better. So come up through the fabric, come out. These are probably a little over a 1/4 inch actually. Just pull it right back down through. Pull it through. Turn it just a little. over just a tiny bit, up through the fabric, back down through. There's a little wider gap, back to the one in the middle. And you'll find with this type of freehand embroidery, if you make a little mistake, you just put another stitch beside it, and it just sort of becomes part of your creation. It's nothing to get upset over. See, they're all different lengths, but this is going to keep radiating outward. So, let me get in there. There. Just a touch farther. And the effect of this, it will look sort of like a carnation or a dianthus flower once it's done. And it will take quite a while to get it together. I'll probably go off camera and sit down and work on it. But I wanted you to see the stitches and kind of how random they are. But that's kind of like how flowers are in nature. They aren't always perfectly symmetrical or exactly even. And that's part of what makes freehand embroidery so awesome. It just lets you create. So I think I will go off camera and I'll come back and let you see this once it's a little farther along, and I'll probably add one more color outside of this, and I'll